let's talk about your team, and then let's talk about, I guess, maybe one of your most interesting or deals that you've done or projects you've created. So how many people are on your team?
So at SDS Capital Group, we have 22 people. We've got a few up in Oregon. We've got our new market tax credit originators in St. Louis. And then on our Southern fund, because that's a partnership, we have an additional 5 people that are fully dedicated to that live throughout the South, the footprint of that fund. So collectively working on our products, about 27 people.
Wow, okay. That's it's good size. And then what would you say has been one of your most interesting deals to date?
Yeah, well, I would say right now, I live in LA, and I mean, I could drive 20 seconds in any direction and I hit a homeless encampment. Not even 20 seconds, 10 seconds. I mean, we've got a crisis in California. So as I mentioned, we have $190 million, SDS supportive housing fund that's completely dedicated to and it's all private sector capital, focused on building permanent supportive housing units, typically 80 to 120 units per project. And, there's no one development within that fund that jumps out, but the fact that we have 835 units of homeless housing in construction today in California with that fund, using private sector money for the land acquisition and the construction, no government money for land or construction. And I'm really proud that and we're funding a developer, RMG Housing. That's just excellent. And they are able to do that development at $240,000 per unit.
Wow.
All in land construction, hard costs, soft costs, when everybody else in the LA market is doing it for $600,000 to $900,000, predominantly using taxpayer subsidy. And so I'm just really excited that we're really on a whole new path of how to think about housing our unhoused and how we could do it quicker, more scalable, using less taxpayer subsidy to build more of this in a much more cost-effective way. So for me, that's really exciting. So it's not one project. It's sort of the concept of, again, how the private sector has a role here that's been underutilized. And if you can figure out how the private sector can get a risk-adjusted rate of return, that's a huge reserve of capital you could potentially tap for America's social problems.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing, Dad. I'm loving this interview. Thank you so much for being on here. So my next question would be emerging manager programs. Have they been helpful in your path to success?
Yeah. 22 years later, we are still an emerging manager, and we'll probably be an emerging manager for another 10 years. Emerging manager is an interesting concept because for some investors, you could have $5 billion of assets under management and still be an emerging manager.
That's that.
$5 billion.
I know.
I don't think I'm emerging anymore. I have emerged.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that, because I read some of those, these pension funds list their emergency management programs and participants, and I read it, I'm like, are they an emerging manager? So to your point, that is so true. But go ahead. How's your experience been so far?
Yeah, well, for me, they're absolutely essential for SDS to be able to grow. Our funds are kind of stuck at about 175 million to 200 million. If we cannot tap public pension fund money, that is one of the biggest, categories of institutional capital. And the challenge a lot of people don't understand is that while there's so much capital, they need to put their money out in such big increments. You know, if you're talking to CalPERS or Texas Retirement System or even smaller pension funds, smaller states, they can't invest less than 50 million or 100 million at a time. And so for an emerging, while I would love to have one investor give me 100 million, they also don't want to be more than 10% of your fund. And, you know, so it's this chicken egg. You got to get bigger before your fund can absorb. You need $1 billion fund to absorb $100 million investor. And how do you get to the billion, you know, how do you get there? Chicken and egg problem. Yeah. So what's great is, you know, that some pension funds around the country, they hire groups like GCM Grosvenor, which recently invested with us. And they say, hey, we're going to give you 500 million Grosvenor, and then you chop it up and you underwrite and you go find those smaller, particularly women and managers of color, because we tend to start organically and grow from fumes and build up versus going the big corporate route for 2 decades and then lifting out with the group and taking $1 billion or $2 billion of investors with us. So we grow organically, we start smaller, and we have this chicken and egg. So Grosvenor takes the pension money, chops it up. And so, you know, we hit a huge watermark this year. Grosvenor just invested 50 million into our American Real Estate Fund 2.
Oh, wow. Clap it up for Grosvenor. Wow, congratulations. That's amazing, Debbie. Great to hear. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a big watermark for SDS and for the American South Fund, because what it does, Niles, is, as I was saying, it's so hard to educate investors that you can be impact and still get risk-adjusted rates of return. But when groups I'm talking to now for our third fund in the South that we're going to be launching soon, they see that Grosvenor puts 5 pension funds in our fund. With pensions, we hope to start getting our funds up to the $400 million range. They're essential for small managers. You can't grow if you can't get pension money. So I wish there were more of these platforms and that more pension funds were engaged in emerging manager platforms. More smaller managers would be able to rise up if there were more of that activity happening.
Well, Debbie, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on this platform to share your amazing story. 20-year overnight success. And congratulations on your most recent award allocation, from Grosvenor. And we wish you nothing but the best and much more allocations in the future. And one of the reasons why I have this platform is to highlight, minorities, military, allies, women, founders, all of it. Give people a spotlight that and you've been on podcasts before and you've been highlighted before, but keep on highlighting these individuals. Like you said, it starts organically, especially if you don't have those connections or that pedigree or whatever the case may be. It starts organically. And I'm a big believer that we have to help each other out. We have to help ourselves, help each other out. And hopefully, like you said, one of the big boys and girls swoops in and gives you an allocation, helps you with your fundraising, et cetera. So it's an awesome story to hear. So I think we covered SDS Capital, and I wish you and your team the best going forward. Shout out to everyone at SDS.